Good morning. The July 24th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order. As the board continues to meet in this hybrid fashion, we'll ask all folks who are attending in person today to ensure that your electronic devices are turned off or at a minimum placed on silence so you do not disrupt today's proceedings. For those of you who will be presenting, we ask that you speak loudly and clearly, state your name, the organization that you are calling in from or participating with, and then begin with your testimony. That is the same for folks who are online. At this time, I'm going to ask our amazing clerk, Ms. Celeste Amato, for any corrections, additions, and noted abstentions to today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. In the absence of Acting Director of Department of Public Works, Khalil Zaid, Deputy Director of DPW, Richard Luna, is voting on his behalf this morning. Thanks for joining us, Richard. We have the following corrections to note this morning. SB 2412599. This item is for BSIT, second extension and increase for contract B5000 4091, computer desktops, laptops, and tablets. In the subject line, we are striking the word second and inserting the word sixth, SIXTH. Under the amount of money and source of funds, we are inserting 4001 American Rescue Plan Act Fund. Before the dollar amount, $1,240,000.00. In the background information, we're striking November 31st, 2024, and inserting December 1st, 2024. And in the background information on number 5, after the word increase, we're inserting the words and extension. There are also corrections on item SB 2412498 for the Department of Housing. This is the fixed pricing policy for July. And the background explanation under address, we are deleting 2914 Parkwood Avenue. Again, deleting the address, 2914 Parkwood Avenue. Under purchaser, we're deleting Parkwood Village LLC. And under purchase price, we're deleting $3,000.00. We have no walk-ons to note this morning. We do have one deferral, SB 2412147, Department of Housing Grant Agreement for Park West Health Systems Incorporated. And the following items are on the non-routine agenda this morning. Item SB 2412631 for Department of Audits, biennial audit performance of the Baltimore City Information Technology Office for fiscal years ending June 30, 2022 and June 30, 2021. Item SB 2412013, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Pre-K through 8 school building. Item SB 2412023, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Grove Park, Pre-K to 8 school building. Item SB 2412026, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Harriet Tubman School Building. Item SB 2412030, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for Sharp Leadenhall Special Ed Elementary School Building. Item SB 2412031, Department of Finance, Public School Property Transfer Agreement for West Baltimore Middle School Building. SB 2412518, Department of General Services, Emergency Procurement P0012122, Advanced Elevator Inspections LLC. SB 2412519, Department of General Services, Emergency Procurement SCON 002754, Johnson Controls Fire Protection LP. SB 2412585 for the Law Department, Casey Morris versus Mayor and City Council of Baltimore. SB 2412599, Baltimore City Information Technology Office, 6th extension and increase for contract B5000 4091, computer desktops, laptops, and tablets. SB 2412740 for the Baltimore City Convention Center, Memorandum of Understanding between Comptroller's Office, Municipal Post Office, and the Baltimore Convention Center. We have the following abstentions to note this morning. The Honorable Mayor Brandon Scott is abstaining on the following: SB 2411818, Health Department, the Johns Hopkins University Medical Case Management, SB 24-11218, Health Department Provider Agreement, the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health, and SB 24-12180, Health Department, the Johns Hopkins University. The Honorable President Nick Mosby has no abstentions this morning. The Honorable Comptroller Bill Henry is abstaining on all travel requests and reimbursements. City Solicitor Ebony Thompson has no abstentions to note this morning. And Deputy Director of Public Works Richard Luna has one abstention on item SB 24-11910. This is a travel request for Marco Merrick for One Water Summit. We also have the following no votes on routine agenda items to note this morning. On behalf of the Honorable President Nick Mosby, we are noting the following no votes. SB 24-12474, Subgrant Agreement, Bon Secours Baltimore Community Works Incorporated. SB 24-12112, Grant Agreement, 300 Block North Gilmore LLC. SB 24-12134, Grant Agreement, Ryan Investments LLC. SB 24-12127, Grant Agreement, 200 East Biddle Street, 200 East Biddle LLC. SB 24-12095, Grant Agreement, 1172 Washington Boulevard LLC. SB 24-12128, Grant Agreement with Baltimore Redlining and Blight Elimination Community Development Corporation. SB 24-12538, Emergency Procurement Application, Northeast Energy Services, BMC Mechanical, Civic Works, and Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. SB 24-12540, Emergency Procurement Application for Northeast Energy Services and BMC Mechanical. SB 24-12404, Second Amendment to Interagency Agreement between Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs and Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement for ARPA Grant 442207. SB 24-12588, Second Amendment, Sole Source Agreement with Clear Channel Outdoor for advertisement of the city's Be More Connected campaign. And SB 24-12599, Second Extension and Increase for Contract B5000 4091, computer desktops, laptops, and tablets. And Mr. President, that concludes the opening statement for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And do you have my no votes for fixed pricing?
I don't see that specific item.
Well, I'll just like to put on the record
No,
that...
a nay for...
Yeah, just like in the past, I
Yep.
vote no on all the fixed pricing items. So we're going to kind of move forward with that as part of our opening statement. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve and adopt the opening statement.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The opening statement has now been adopted. I would like to direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated July 22nd, 2024. Identify matters to be considered as routine agenda items together with any corrections, additions, abstentions, and no votes that have been noted by our amazing clerk. I'll at this time entertain a motion to approve all items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda has now been adopted. The first item on our routine agenda this morning can be found on page 6, SB 2412631, Department of Audits. And the request is to note a biennial performance audit of the Baltimore City Information Technology for fiscal years ending in June 21 and June 22. On behalf of the audits, we have our amazing auditor, Mr. Auditor.
Good morning, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, honorable board members. My name is Josh Pash. I'm the City Auditor, and I am here to present the biennial performance audit for BSITs. I'll wait a minute for the presentation to come up. I want to start by thanking BSIT and our audit team for helping us get to this audit and making it a successful audit. Next slide. So plan to cover the audit objectives in our scope and the risks identified for review, our audit methodology, background, the findings, and the implementation status of the prior findings. Next slide. Audit objectives and scope. So our objective was to evaluate whether the recovery practices, both critical and important systems set by Baltimore City Information Technology, are consistent with the city's Baltimore's assessment and best practices, whether BSIT has appropriate continuity and recoverability plans and infrastructure, and to follow up on the findings in the last audit. We looked at fiscal years 2022 and 2021. Next slide. For the risks, we looked at operational risk, we looked at data security risk, and we looked at IT risk. Next slide. Our audit methodology. So we identified and reviewed applicable standards, including documents published by the National Institute of Standards and Technology and the State of Maryland, their IT standards. We also reviewed the draft IT disaster recovery plan, including compliance with those relevant standards. We also interviewed and inquired of key personnel of BSIT to obtain an understanding of the processes, procedures, and internal controls related to the disaster recovery. And then we did an analysis of the key risks associated with creation of a citywide list of critical applications, recovery processes, and procedures and testings, and backup of city data. We also reviewed documentation of backups performed to determine whether the backups occurred as stated into the disaster recovery plan and that they were complete. We tested all 9 quarterly restoration tests that occurred during our period to see that they addressed the testing requirements, and then reviewed contracts with our third-party backup sites and their systems and organization control type 2 reports. So now I'm going to go into some background of the different items that we'll be bringing up in the presentation to give background. So the Information Technology Disaster Recovery Plan, it was drafted in March of 2020. It was in conjunction with a consultant and BSIT, and it was based on NIST standards and the State of Maryland IT standards. Next slide. So here is a graphic that was provided by BSIT to give an understanding of how the backup works. So in the center top is the BSIT data servers, and then they are backed up to TierPoint on the left. TierPoint does a secondary backup to AWS, and then on the bottom right, our mainframe is backed up by Blue Hill, which is a third party. So recovery objectives. There are 2 terms, RPO, which is recovery point objective, and RTO, which is recovery time objective. The difference is the recovery point objective on the left is how frequently the city is doing backups. So at any given point in time, that tells us how old the data is going to be that has been backed up. The recovery time objective is the amount of time it takes the city to get back up and running. So in this graphic, we have the disaster or the event, which the systems go down. If, for example, we back up every 2 hours, which is our RPO, and then the city is down for 3 hours, then our data, when it gets back up, is going to be 5 hours. The 2 hours from the last backup at most, and then the 3 hours to get back up and running. Next slide. So we'll also come and discuss a business impact analysis. So what that does is it identifies priorities for each application and includes the recovery expectations. It helps agencies establish target recovery objectives such as RPO and RTO. And what it does, it takes the goals of the organization, they do a risk analysis, and then they create a business continuity management strategy. Basically, the idea is you identify which are the most important systems and how quickly you need them up, and then those are prioritized in the disaster recovery plan. Next slide. In the draft disaster recovery plan, the systems are classified into 3 buckets. Category 0 is core infrastructure, which includes the core network, components, Active Directory, and our backup systems. And Category 1 is applications that support mission-critical services, such as public safety. And then Category 2 is all of the application systems that have, with a priority focus on applications supporting the finance function. We'll get into that. Next slide. Okay, so how the city does backups now. So BSIT automatically backs up the entire city's data, either daily, weekly, or monthly, except for certain agencies that have backups performed by the third parties. For example, the health department has agreements with third parties to keep certain information that they have as confidential and HIPAA. We use two backup sites, Blue Hill and Terrapoint, and there are cloud storage services that are managed by third-party services to provide a robust capacity and quick response to disruptive events. And those backup sites are there to recover data and help to get the city back to normal operations more quickly. Next slide. Oh, finding one. Okay. Our first finding, the city does not have a fully documented disaster recovery plan that reflects the current hybrid on and off-premise applications, infrastructure, and computing environment. Okay, let me back up a second. So we broke up the findings into three categories. The first category, the first finding, is the disaster recovery plan as a whole. Is it documented? Is it planned? Is it set up in the case of a disaster? The second finding is the business impact analysis. And then the third finding is regarding documentation of restoration tests. Okay, back to the first finding. So we found that the city has invested, or BSIT has invested significant backup practices, but is not fully invested in recovery practices. The city does not have a fully documented DRP, including technical recovery procedures for use during actual disaster, recovery and the related exercises to return the city to normal applications. Those exercises, those documentations, they have not formalized, and the specific procedures to perform that restoration is missing or not complete. Next slide. The effect is a fully documented DRP, including technical recovery procedures, facilitates the city in mitigating the impact of operational, financial, and service risks, and supports return to operations following a disaster. When we talked to BSIT to identify a cause, they noted limited staffing has impacted their ability to complete the DRP and to formally document all of those technical recovery procedures. Our recommendation, next slide, is that BSIT reevaluate, update, formalize, and implement the consultant's recommendations for the DRP, and to update those to be reflective of the current and future city computing environment. The DRP, which was set up in 2020, is not relevant to the computing environment of today. The plan should contain realistic DRP assumptions, appropriate technical recovery procedures, meet requirements of the agency continuity of operations plan. So the recommendation is not only to have the BSIT DRP, but have that built in with the entire COOP plan of the city. Finding 2. The city does not have a complete list of critical applications that is consistent with the DRP and the COOP expectations, including targeted recovery objectives for all critical applications. BSIT has not completed a citywide business impact analysis and updated the DRP. As of March of 2024, the impact analysis and determination of critical applications with targeted recovery objectives has only been performed for four city agencies, that being Department of General Services, Department of Housing and Community Development, Department of Law, Department of Transportation. We also noted that their complete list does not include agency-owned and managed applications that are backed up by third parties. I gave the example of the health department prior. And then the responsibility for DRP for these applications has not been defined and clarified of who's taking the responsibility in case an event occurs. Next slide. Okay, the effect. The absence of a BIA may result in misprioritization or missed critical services, not identifying those critical services ahead of time, and lack of oversight responsibility for agency applications that are restored by third parties may impact the ability of those agencies to return to normal operations in the event of a disaster. Recommendations. We recommend that the BSIT conduct meetings with respective city agencies and mayoral offices to revise, update key terminology, definitions of criticality, recovery time objectives, roles and responsibilities. Based on those, compile a list of critical applications across the city, including specific agency applications backed up by third parties, in other words, those handled by agencies not by BSIT, and determine the criticality and the priority, to establish governance and oversight for disaster recovery, including roles, responsibilities for BSIT managed applications, as well as where agency applications are backed up by third parties, or in those cases where an agency has its own IT unit in place, and make sure that there's coordination between all those parties and are all on the same page. And then to work with the CAO, the Director of Finance, and the OEM to update the administrative manual to incorporate requirements for agencies to develop BI in coordination with BSID, making it a requirement for the city and prioritizing it for the entire city, all agencies, as well as BSID. Finding 3. The BSID does not have test plans to fully comply with the restoration testing requirements for all critical applications. As I mentioned earlier, this is on the restoration phase. So very basically, backup disaster recovery plan, you have your backup, which makes sure that the data is set aside and you're able to access it in case everything goes down. And then restoration is testing to make sure that once something happens, that you can actually get to that backup and put it back on operation and live, you can actually use it. The BSID has not developed test plans and schedules to fully comply with the DRP restoration testing requirements. From March of 2022 to March of 2024, BSID performed 9 quarterly restoration tests across servers for 3 agencies, one of those being BSID. This testing was limited and addressed infrastructure applications Category 0 and 3 applications for Category 2. We noted that the testing was not adequately documented. There was no evidence of completion for 6 on 9 tests, or 67%. We noted that neither BSID nor IT agency units have coordinated and validated test results for the restoration performed by vendors on behalf of the city. So when third parties are contracted to do the city backup and restoration, they're also contracted to do that testing. And we noted that the city has not been working with those vendors to making sure those tests are working effectively. The effect. The effect is BSID cannot demonstrate that all city applications and operations can be successfully restored in the event of a disaster. We recommend that BSID develop a cost-effective, coordinated test plan for all critical city applications and base that test plan, develop reasonable schedule to perform restoration testing for categories 0, 1, and 2, or as they determine when they update the DRP, and to resolve any issues identified during the testing, and then to coordinate validating testing restorations performed by vendors or managed by IT agencies on behalf of the city. So when that responsibility has been delegated out to either a city agency or to a third party, coordinate, validate that testing is working. And then to retain documentation, including test plans and the evidence of completion. Next slide. Okay. Follow-up status. So the objective of the prior audit was to evaluate whether the city has adequate policies and procedures to guide the IT procurement process to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of IT operations and costs. In summary, 2 recommendations were completed, 1 recommendation was partially implemented, and 1 was not implemented. The first finding was controls are not established for expenditure authorizations while the controls over P-card purchases are limited. We noted that the recommendations for that finding were implemented. The second, there is no comprehensive list of critical applications deployed across the city. As we noted in finding 2, that there is not that complete list. We also determined that it was partially implemented because the city does not have citywide policies and procedures outlining roles and responsibilities regarding the maintenance of application inventory and enforcing best practices around upgrades, planning, remediation, and business continuity. Next slide. Prior finding number 3, BSID infrastructure does not have formal policies and procedures for documentation of IT software procurement review process, and this is specific on the infrastructure section of BSID, and BSID has implemented the recommendations around that. Finding 4, the city's AM manual sections for computer systems and services are outdated and are not reflective of the current practices, thus creating ambiguity. It is not implemented. This was determined because the AM 30110 draft does not address procurement process. I'll take any questions now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Auditor. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Comptroller?
I'm sorry, just an oversight from a previous conversation we had. The comprehensive list of critical applications that hasn't been completed, that technically can be addressed in the earlier recommendation that the CIO work with the CAO to pull that together from the different agencies. Was
Yes.
that because I couldn't remember if that was explicitly said during that earlier recommendation or whether we need to connect that dot.
Right. So the disaster recovery plan as a whole, documentation, which is finding 1, would include the business impact analysis. So,
And that would include
Yeah.
the critical, okay, that was just what I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any other questions or concerns for the auditor? Hearing and seeing none, it's time. We're going to allow the agency to come and speak about the findings. Mr. Director?
Good morning, Council President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, members of the board. We do have a presentation that we want to talk to. First of all, I want to say that throughout this audit, we really did, I hear it's a lot, but the collaboration and work with the audit team was really spot on. They were very flexible. As an example, toward the end of last year, we had not only a single audit, but this audit occurring. We've actually moved this audit such that we could focus on one and then do the next, and because they were pulling up the same people. So we really felt that that collaboration was good. Second thing, we looked at this audit and we said to ourselves, you know what, we do have to spend more time in this area. However, we have done, and I want to make sure that everyone today hears the things we have done in lieu of the very specific things that are outlined in this audit today, because at the end of the day, you have to have some sort of foundation from which you can build a recovery plan on. So to that end, I'm going to go through these slides, just a couple of slides, and talk to that, okay? Our first slide just talks to just who we are as an organization with our mission, vision, and values. We put this up all the time so that we can focus our team on who we are, what we are about, so that we can deliver the best possible services to Baltimore City and Baltimore City residents. We use this slide at every meeting we do. The next slide really focuses on just the services. I don't know if the public or members of the board or the people in the audience understands the full scope of what BSIT does, but as you can see, we have not only customer-facing services, but core services to other agencies within Baltimore City. Most people do not realize that the 311 call center is under BSIT, as well as the broadband and digital equity program, to name a few. So this is who we are from a mission, vision, and values, and this is who we are from a services perspective. Next slide, please. So regarding the current or prior findings, my eyesight is struggling with a brother a little bit, so I'm going to, it's a long story, Mr. Mayor. So development of as you can see, the first two we've implemented, but we still have work to do on the others regarding the inventory of business critical applications. Let's talk about that. The 4 agencies that was referenced in the audit report, DOT, Housing and Community Development, HCD, so I just said HCD, wait a minute, we meet with them all the time. I'll just move on from that. But anyway, what we do, what we have is a full list of actually complete, or as complete as we can, applications. The issue is we don't have the specific metadata about the applications that are in areas other than the ones that we directly support. And so we have to know, we have to do a lot of work for that. And by metadata, we have to get to a point by making sure we understand like what applications are on what servers, what jobs support those servers on a nightly basis, a whole bunch of details that will help us fill in the detail of what that list looks like. Regarding for the standards for procurement for those applications, we know we need to do that. And then lastly, by 9/25, we should have the inventory of those applications completed, as well as by 6/25, the standards for those purchases done. We do plan to bring a AM policy revision to the board on 8/24 this next month, and that will be for the establishment of an IT policies manual. So we'll have the capability to add more and more policies in a more direct, more consistent, more frequent manner that we can publish throughout all of Baltimore City. Next slide. So I'm going to talk through this slide a little bit because when you think about the audit, and I mentioned earlier that we have The foundation that we have to build is centered on a couple of things. One, data. We have to make sure that the data that we use every day is managed in a way that it's backed up. And then the auditor, chief auditor, talked about that. But we have to make sure that that data is encrypted, not only in rest, but in transit. And in addition to that, we have to make sure that if someone were to attack us, that most of the bad guys come in, they go for your backups so that they can corrupt your backups. We have to make sure that we have the tools around that so that if someone does get in, they can't screw up our backups and diminish our ability to recover. The next area is applications. We've made a concerted effort to move a lot of critical applications to the cloud. By moving them to the cloud, it gives us the capability for redundancy, remote work, but in a way that's probably more robust than what we could probably afford to do in Baltimore City. And so a number of key applications are looking to go online, certainly Workday, but our tax system, our permit system for housing, our permit system for right-of-way. We have a system for construction management. So our towing systems, all those systems are moved to the cloud in a way that gives us the ability and flexibility to have stronger disaster recovery capabilities in the event that a disaster would occur. We also upgraded a number of our tool sets. Every tool that we have that stops and prevents a bad guy from getting in and causing damage we've replaced. If you recall, several years ago, we had several outages. They were intermittent, they were not predictable, but they occurred because we had faulty firewalls. We replaced those firewalls. Now, you all are probably saying, what does that have to do with disaster recovery? It has a lot to do with disaster recovery because it allows us to have the foundation from which we can build a plan that if you look at the plan that was built in 2020, we don't look anything like we did in 2020. And you saw the words often in the auditor's report. It talks about cost effective. When you think about disaster recovery, you have to think about the cost. Everyone wants to have their system restored within an hour or less. Well, if you do that, you've got to build in the infrastructure to allow that to occur. And we have to make distinctions between here is a system that we need to recover from a redundancy perspective. That is, I have a hot, back and forth. Or here's a system that I do all the things I need to do so that I can restore it very quickly, and as opposed to having built all that infrastructure. That's the kind of exercise we need to go through to make sure that we understand what those requirements are for each of those applications and those agencies, as well as what are cost-effective ways to provide that recovery mechanism. And that's what we intend to do. We recognize we have a lot of work to do. We're up for the challenge, but I wanted to give everyone a sense as to here's what we've been doing in lieu of directly building on a DR plan. We haven't ignored it. We haven't not thought about it. We intend to hit the dates that we set out there. We believe we can do Category 0 by June of next year in terms of restoration. That's the infrastructure piece because we've done a lot of work on that, but we have a lot more work to do for the applications pieces. Next slide. And so here are the dates of when we have committed to I apologize for didn't bring my glasses today. So we're looking certainly to identify a vendor and secure funding so that we can begin this in October of 2024. We want to have a governance body that oversees the disaster recovery process that will consist of major agencies as well as key constituents throughout the government. We want to bring our consultant that we intend to use to the BOE by March of 2025. And by June of 2025, that Category 0, we see ourselves as being able to test that because we've done a lot of work for that. In September, we should have our final report that includes a list of all of those critical applications. We intend to start implementing those recommendations by November 2025, and then by June 2026, test categories 1 and categories 2. We think that timeline may shift a little bit, hopefully but we wanted to put something out there that will allow us to at least deal with some of the unforeseen things that tend to come up. So with that, I'll ask, are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Mr. Director. At this time, Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Morning.
One simple one, because we had a very extensive set of conversations around this as this audit was coming together, and I really do appreciate the way IT and audits work together on this. I'm sorry that I forgot to ask during those conversations, are any of the policies or procedures that were audited as part of this audit required for our cybersecurity insurance?
The short answer is no.
Okay.
What is required, the long answer,
Yeah.
what is required for our cyber insurance is that we conduct a cyber response drill and do that on a yearly basis. And we've been doing that ever since 2020. We had our last one, I believe, in February of this year. And we have them every year as part of not only just our readiness for responding to an event, but also the tying of what we do to agencies' COOP plans, as well as the requirements for the cyber insurance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns regarding this issue? Hearing and seeing none, we will note the audit. We thank you to the audit team. And I also wanted to just take a point of personal privilege and thank you, Director Carter, for your leadership and your responsiveness to the global meltdown last week, and just ensuring that you were communicating to all of us. And Baltimore City pretty much functioned pretty seamlessly, and we truly appreciate your leadership.
Just a note on that, you're welcome. We still have work to do.
Yeah.
There's the root cause as to what specifically happened. Our teams have been working over the weekend, I think there's even a meeting today to make sure that we understand exactly what happened. And it's sometimes more challenging than not to get to that root cause. And so that's what we've been working on and will continue to work on.
But again, thank you for all your around-the-clock work and keeping us informed and keeping our city afloat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I move this back like that? Guys, I feel like I'm all over you.
The technical person in you decided to do that. We appreciate that.
We can always find
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll be back later on.
Yes, sir. Yes. Okay, so again, the audit will be noted at this time. The next are 7 items that was put on routine, but I think there's going to be, that the administration has agreed to defer. It's really to,
We were still going to talk, and then
we're going to bring Department of, you want to bring Department of Finance up?
here.
Why talk about it? We're going to defer, we're going to do it anyway
Well,
next week.
we were going to explain why we were going to defer it, but if you don't, we don't have to.
Yes, we'll just move on.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And plus, we're going to have a chance to talk about it when we actually hear it. So the next items are SB 24-12027, SB 24-12018, SB 24-12013, SB 24-12023, SB 24-12026, SB 24-12030, and SB 24-12031. There's Department of Finance items related to public school property transfer agreements for 7 Baltimore City public school buildings. The comptroller would like to continue to work with finance and the state, and the administration has agreed to defer. I believe we do not have to take a vote on that.
We technically, we have to take a vote on it because
Because it's actually
been
routine.
deferred. It's been deferred before.
You're right, Mr. Comptroller. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The items are deferred. The next item on non-routine is, I believe, the emergency procurements. And the first one can be found on pages 28 and 29, SB 2412-518. Department of General Services, the request is to note an emergency procurement with Advanced Elevator Inspectors Incorporated. On behalf of DGS, we have...
Good morning, Council President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Comptroller Henry, and honorable members of the board. My name is Berke Atira, Director of Department of General Services. I'm here today to talk about two emergency requests that are with two different companies but serving the same purpose, which is the elevator inspections. The vendors that we're talking about today, they provide third-party qualified vendor inspections, which are crucial for ensuring the well-being and the safety for public visitors to the city facilities and our employees. And currently, we do have contracts in place, but they are set to expire, and this is a stopgap measure before that expiration happens, so we don't create a backlog of these inspections that we need to do. Our work started in March of this year to get this contract, but CPA Adam Manny can attest that this is a very complex procurement, and we've been working on getting the scope right so that we're not putting a contract out there that it's not going to produce what we need to do. I'm happy to tell you that as of July, the beginning of July, that the scope has been finalized and then the bid is going to be out, and we're hoping to finalize the work by the end of within a 6-month period, which will then allow us to go into the long-term contract. And once the current contracts are over, this emergency procurement will allow us to bridge that time gap for the services in between. So the first company that you had mentioned, Mr. President, is the, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name.
Advanced Elevator.
Advanced Elevator. And then the other one is, I believe, the
Yeah, but we're going to take that second. I know it's
Okay.
kind of related, but we're just
okay,
gonna
so I will
Bifurcate.
repeat
Yes, sir.
this thing. So I can take any questions about that one.
Thank you so much, Mr. Director. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from the board? Just for the record, before we go to Mr. Comptroller, could you just put on the record the amount that we're talking about in this emergency procurement? Do you have the dollar amount?
Matt?
427 and change. 427.5.
$427,500.
Thank you. We just like to do that. Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Technically, I just have a quick question for procurement.
I tried. I tried.
And I'm gonna say this very specifically because I think I'm gonna ask the same question again on a later item. Can we have an assurance that a new contract will actually be awarded by the end of December 2024 so that we don't have DGS coming back with another emergency extension?
The answer to that, sir, is maybe. It depends upon negotiations, but we're very confident that we can have this wrapped up. As the director said, these contracts and these procurements can get very complicated very quickly. In a previous life, just as an example, there was an elevator maintenance and inspection contract that was done biannually, and as in looking at it, the elevator that they were inspecting had been removed for 5 years. But the entity had just kept paying for it over and over. So we want to make sure that we do this right, that we have the right company in place, and that the scope and the terms of the contract are in the best interest of the city.
And hopefully DGS will make sure that there's been some type of cover placed over the elevator that's been removed for 5 years.
Well, just
Not
to-
here, it wasn't here.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to be
wasn't
clear
here.
on that it was a past life of Adams, not the past in the city.
Not here, it wasn't
Not
here.
here. That did not happen in here, but I mean, we will make sure that will not ever.
Okay, yeah, I don't need any get to the last drop kind of references. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Comptroller?
Yeah, that's
Good.
it, yeah.
Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Actually, I think
Oh,
we're
it's
just
actually,
noting.
it's an emergency procurement item. We can only note it at this time. It's already done. Thank you so much.
All right.
But you can just stay right there. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 30 and 31, SB 2412519, Department of General Services. This request is to note an emergency procurement for Johnson Controls Fire Protection, LP. On behalf of the administration, we have.
Director Attila, Department of General Services. This item is the second vendor to provide the similar services for third-party qualified inspections for our city's elevators. And this is an emergency request to bridge the gap to avoid any backlog for the contract that is going to end and the contract's going to start to provide these services.
And just for the record, the amount of,
Do we have, Matt?
06.
Say it again.
106,000.
106,000.
thank you so much, Mr. Director. At this time, are there any questions or concerns for members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, this will be noted as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 81 and 82, SB 2412585, Law Department. The request is to approve a settlement agreement and release for Cassie Morris. On behalf of the Law Department, we have.
Good morning. Matthew Bradford, Chief of Staff of the Law Department. Council President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, members of the board. This request for settlement improvement concerns, is the microphone on this time?
No, you're doing good.
This request for settlement approval concerns several sewer backups at the home owned by Casey Morris. The allegations are as followed. Ms. Morris is a 2021 first-time home buyer in the Yale Heights Beachfield community. Less than a year after purchasing her home, she experienced 3 sewer backups in her basement in a span of 4 months. The first was in August 22, the second was in October 22, and the third was in November 22. After each backup, she contacted 311. DPW, the Department of Public Works, then serviced and removed debris from the main line. This relief was only temporary as the subsequent backups occurred after the first servicing. It was not until the water infrastructure on her street was replaced that the sewer backups stopped. Ms. Morris filed a lawsuit seeking damages for her property, cleaning costs, and non-economic damages. Now, the city is generally responsible for maintenance of its sewer infrastructure. However, the city is generally only responsible for a claim where it has notice of a defect. Given the circumstances and risk of an adverse verdict here, the Law Department recommends and requests approval of a settlement amount of $69,080. And I'll take any questions from the board.
Thank you so much. At this time, Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chief Bradford. Can you talk a little bit more about the city's liability in this case and what led us to settle on how this differs from other cases like this one?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I think so. Going back to the homeowner and their request to the city, generally when the city defends these cases, what we are looking for at the claim stage is notice. What did we know at the time that the first backup happened? Once the backup happens and we respond and DPW services the line, normally under those circumstances, that sort of ends the inquiry because it fixes the problem. In this particular case, after the servicing happened, she continued to have more backups, and she called DPW again. And so at that point, once we have known that there is something wrong, and we eventually had to replace the line itself, that sort of indicates that that is a problem with city infrastructure that we are on notice of and now have to negotiate settlement of the claim.
Thank you. And I think it's important just to note, Mr. President, Mr. Comptroller, and members of the board, that we know that sewage backups has been a long-standing, ongoing issue in the city of Baltimore. We also have to note that DPW is currently working with our regulators, EPA, MDA, on proposed updates and changes to our building a backup program. Our goal is really to build a program that's equitable, that allows our citizens experience in backups and provide them the support that they need. The agency is hopeful that we may be close to agreement on that. I also want to use this as an opportunity to uplift the resources that we do provide. We know that DPW has a expedited reimbursement program for sewage backups where it's caused by capacity-related backups for weather events. That program currently offers up to $5,000 per dwelling unit, and you can find that information on DPW's website, which is publicworks.baltimorecity.gov.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. At this time, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved.
Thank you, and before I go, I do want to wish a very happy upcoming birthday to the city
Oh,
solicitor.
look at that. I didn't know that. When is your birthday?
Oh, boy.
When's the birthday, Madam Solicitor?
Friday, sir.
Friday. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chief of Staff. Look at that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Skate by.
The mayor said you made up for missing the pink tie memo today. All right, the next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 100 and 101, SB 2412599, the Department of Information Technology. This request is to approve an extension and increase the technology license service software agreement with Applied Technology Services Incorporated. On behalf of the department, we have...
Good morning again. My name is Todd Carter. I have with me Amani Felder. Amani Felder is our new contracts manager for BSIT. She's been in the job for about a year now, and she's been doing a lot of great things, and here's an opportunity for her to speak in front of the board and give the details that she's provided. So on behalf of BSIT, I introduce to you Amani Felder, our contracts manager. Amani?
Thank you. Good morning. So we BSIT are requesting the 6th extension on the computer, desktops, and laptops contract. I have a presentation. You can go to the next slide. So for this slide, we're just representing the board actions historically that we've placed on the contract. Currently, the original cost of the contract was $20 million. We only have $80,000 remaining, and this contract uses for PC refresh, ARPA refresh, as well as agency orders. And since we have a new contract currently being evaluated, it was just open, the bids were open June 26th. We don't predict that the $80,000 will allow us to work through the evaluation process and fulfill the current upcoming purchases. We can go to the next slide. So this is just a timeline based off of, just to give some background history on why we've been requesting increases. Just going through administrative delay, as well as we was awarded funding, we had to go back to the solicitation for the new contract and actually add in ARPA compliant language. Once we actually added that information to Workday and having the process, getting approved, the contract approved, and through procurement, that additional steps took a little bit of time, and this is just the representation of how long that time took. Next slide. And this is just a representation of our administrative delay due to procurement backlog, as well as revisions to the solicitation that I previously mentioned as far as including ARPA compliant language. You can go to the next slide. So the reason for the 6th extension, we do need this additional money, which is $2.5 million for the ARPA refresh, upcoming PC refresh, as well as additional agency ad hoc request. We have implemented a plan to cover that cost throughout the end of the year while we go through the contract process. Our infrastructure team will allow agencies to make small order requests and issue journal entries so that it can cover the costs that we have, as well as bulk order requests. We'll receive a bid for the current, from the awarded vendors under the current contract, and that bid will allow them to place orders for the big bulk order and allow us to keep our stock at hand so we're not running out. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. Thank you. And this is just the timeline that we drafted. It is an estimate, but we wanted to just kind of put something in place to assure that we won't be coming back for any additional increases or extensions. We are going through the proposals that we just received on June 26th. The proposals, we have 7 bidders that we have to review. There are two portions. So the technical proposals, we have to send back to procurement as well. Then we have to review the price proposals. And we also anticipate that we'll have to do additional interviews for the vendors just to make sure that they are qualified to do the work, because the PC hardware is not just focused on hardware, it's also focused on servicing to include configuration. And those services, we just want to make sure we have people doing the right job. So we'll do interviews for the process. So we're anticipating that we'll have this completed and approved by the end of December. Okay? Any questions?
Thank you so much. Just one quick question, and you might not be prepared to answer it today, but I'll ask. Is there some MWBE participation in this particular contract?
In the new one or the current?
The current one.
The current, no, the goals were waived.
The goals were waived.
Yes, because it was just already.
And historically, I've, as president of City Council and on this board, talked about BSIT and kind of the historic waivers. The anticipation is the new contract will have certain participation goals and thresholds built into it.
Yes, correct. So this is the new contract that we're looking for will focus on the hardware and the servicing. So the servicing will have goals implemented. I don't have the exact percentage, but I can get that information for you.
Thank you so much. And I'd just like to put on the record that obviously this is a huge missed opportunity, not by anyone that's sitting on the dais today, but in the past, where we see a tremendous amount of waivers that have been done in BSIT for decades and not provided any level of scrutiny associated with women or minority or local-owned companies to participate. And I'm excited that the administration has moved in a different direction, particularly for a contract that has a significant amount of hardware that's built in. When we're talking about procurement, that is an entry point for MWBE participation for contracts that have historically been lack of inclusive and without participation. So thank you so much again, Director, Mr. Mayor, and the administration for your leadership on this particular issue. Again, this is an issue that I've been talking about since I was on the council. It's near and dear to my heart, just with my professional background outside of City Hall.
I'd like to add one thing, Council President Mosby. We have a renewed focus on MWBE participation. At our procurement conference that we just had several months ago, we put a slide up that showed the increase of where we were several years ago to where we are and the gains that we've done in just contributing to that particular group. So we're very focused on it. We also have an initiative which Amani is leading, has to do with called an IDIQ, which is indefinite quantity, indefinite delivery, which allows us to focus certain types of IT work just on that community alone. And that's what we're currently working on as well.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you for your leadership. If you could please share that slide with me, I truly appreciate it. I know that, while we're talking about the topic, DPW, again, under the leadership of the mayor, has gone down the path of doing, or at least looking at unbundling a particular contract. I also think that, once we successfully come out of that pilot, that maybe BSIT has been the poster child for not having and doing these waivers, but could be the poster child of maybe putting this new pilot there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or concerns? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, there was one little technical one about the process that I forgot to ask before, which is you have the supplier interviews before you do the bid price openings, and I was just wondering, does everybody who submitted an initial bid still submit prices, or do you use the interviews to wean out who you are still considering and only open prices for a smaller number?
The pricing is for everybody.
Okay.
They won't know the decision until the time of award.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is still yours.
I have a question for procurement.
Okay. Mr. CPO?
Yeah.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Will a new contract be
The answer
awarded?
again is maybe. It all depends upon negotiations, but I am confident that we will have this in place before the end of the year.
That sounded a lot like the answer from the first time. Okay, all right. We'll take that for now, and we will hope to not be disappointed later this fall.
I hope not to disappoint you with
Thank
it.
And since the comptroller called you up, I'll jump right in again. Please just keep a watchful eye on waiver requests and opportunities for participation for women and minority and local-owned companies as we go down the pathway of not making BSIT the poster child of waivers in
Absolutely,
the
sir.
city. All right, thank you so much.
Got Chris Lundy here, too.
We have Chris Lundy here as well. Yeah. You want to participate in the, come on.
Sure thing. Good morning. I just wanted to add, BSIT's been an excellent partner. They've done a lot of work to really unbundle their contracts already. So one of the contracts that you'll recall with Motorola, they were able to break out part of the scope of work.
I know
so
about
we
that
could get
contract a
those.
lot, unfortunately.
But we were able to get additional participation by actually unbundling that contract and not keeping it, so just all of the work was within one agreement. So they've been really doing that work of looking at all of their contracts to do that, and like the program they referenced. So they've been really great at really trying to find ways. And we're going to be, we've already given unbundling guidance to the agencies, but we're going to be having another training that's going to go over how they can think about just busting out contracts in general, whether that be geography, certain types of services, so we don't always have to have like a large $10 billion contract coming to the board. We can have much smaller contracts. And this is some of the work also we saw in the new Maryland Procurement Playbook that just rolled out from the State Comptroller's Office that we were fortunate enough to be a part of, to really see that our contracts are very large. And as we break those up to smaller amounts, we should be able to provide even more opportunities.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership as well. And thank you for raising up the Motorola contract. I believe that is probably the contract that kicked off my campaign to continue to push and ask and work with the administration and working with BSIT. So again, this administration and you, Director Carter, haven't been anything but exceptional as it relates to really undoing what was consistently a best practice, well, a practice in the city for far too long.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Comptroller?
Yeah, don't go away. Just a quick question, because Director Carter pointed out that this is the new version of this contract will be for both hardware and services.
Yes.
Now, does that mean that allows you to potentially put MBE and WBE goals on each, or one big MBE, WBE goal that can be accomplished by doing a combination of hardware providers and service providers?
So the goals will be limited to the services, because the hardware is OEM hardware that we're buying.
Oh, okay.
So similar to the challenge that DGS has when we're buying these things directly from manufacturer. If we put goals on it, we're only going to be going to somebody for them to give price escalation as we go through that process. So what
Just
happened?
for services?
Yes.
Okay.
So what the challenge BSIT has is oftentimes they are just doing hardware. In the prior contracts were limited to hardware. That's how we got to the waiver. Now adding in those services, we now have a contract that will be able to have goals and bring more opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is approved. The next item on our routine agenda can be found on pages 90 and 91, SB 2412750, Baltimore Convention Center. This request is to approve a memorandum of understanding between the Baltimore Convention Center and the Comptroller's Office for Municipal Post Office Services. On behalf of the Convention Center, we have
Matt Campbell, Executive Director. Good morning, members of this honorable board. Really happy to be here. This is an incredibly niche thing, but an incredibly exciting thing for us at the Convention Center. Coming out of the pandemic, our functioning business center that provides shipping, receiving, printing services, things of those natures to our customers directly and their attendees, shuttered, and we were struggling very hard to find a replacement. And, you know, necessity breeds invention, and we are a big family here in the city. I want to commend the MPO director, Charmaine Callahan, for taking my call and kind of thinking outside the box with me. We said, well, why can't we do this ourselves? and she's been leading her team, and with your support, Mr. Comptroller, we're ready to open business this summer or early fall and provide a service that's missing that our competitors have, and we don't. So we're just really excited about it.
Thank you. Mr. Comptroller?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to thank MAC for thinking of us. And I am glad that this worked out really well, that we were able to find a way to make all of this work. It's a real win-win, both for the convention center and for MPO, but probably more importantly, it's going to be a win for all of the convention attendees who will have a functioning business center again. And I just wanted to connect the dots for the rest of the board. A couple months back, we approved the purchase of intelligent lockers for city buildings that let the MPO put all of the mail for a building in one specific location, and then agency folks can come down and pick up their mail. The time savings for MPO in not having to have somebody walk around each building and drop off the mail is how we're able to provide the staffing for the business center without having to hire extra staff. Awesome. And that's just an example of how, when we all work together, we can make some real progress. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mac. Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Mac, I think as always, whenever you're here, we'd just like to know what's in the convention center this week. So you can tell us. I already know, which is why I asked the question.
Yeah, and thank you for your attendance last night. We had a national convention of the Pentecostals, and they have been here all week, and it has been a vibrant time on Pratt Street. So
I looked over at the Chief of Staff Marvin to see his reaction on that one. Amen. Josh is smiling as well.
We're happy to be busy.
All right. All right. Any additional questions or concerns? Hearing and seeing none, at this time I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item has now been approved. Is there anything else, Madam Clerk? All right. As there's no new business before the desk of this board, we will adjourn. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Estimates will occur on Wednesday, August the 7th at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, we love you.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Hi, TV 25. I think we're ready to get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Estimates bid opening for July 24th, 2024. We have 3 bids that we are opening today. And the first one is for the Department of Recreation and Parks, RP 24809, for the renovation of the Robert C. Marshall Field.
We have one bidder, Allied Contractors, Inc. That total is 4,317,346.00.
So that number was 4,317,346.00.
That is correct.
Do we have a bid bond for this?
Yes, we do.
And no checks or anything?
No.
That bidder, which was our only bidder, was Allied Contractors, Inc. for $4,317,346.00. And this was for RP 24809, the Robert C. Marshall Field renovation. Up next for the Department of Public Works, we have contract WC 1448, Urgent Need Water Infrastructure Rehabilitation and Improvements, Phase 1. Fiscal year 25.
Up first, we have Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. That total is 11,800,000,000.00.
Okay, that number was 11,800,000.00.
That is correct.
And we have a bid bond?
Yes, we do.
And no checks with these, correct? No. Okay. That bidder was Monumental Paving and Excavating, Inc. for $11,800,000.00.
Thanks. Great. Up next, we have Spinello. That total is 16,433,330.00.
Okay, that number was 16,433,330.00.
That is correct.
And we have a bid bond?
Yes, we do.
That bidder was Spinello for $16,433,330.00.
Our final bidder is Civil Construction, LLC. That total is 21,761,250.00.
That number was 21,761,250.00.
That is correct.
And we have a bid bond?
Yes, we do.
That bidder was Civil Construction LLC for $21,761,250.00. And that was our final of three bidders?
Yep.
For WC 1448 Urgent Need Water Infrastructure Rehabilitation and Improvements, Phase 1, fiscal year '25. And up next, for the Bureau of Procurement, we have RFQ 000558, Pavement Marking and Signage Services for Baltimore City.
We have one bidder, Corporate Maintenance Group, LLC. That total is 2,798,800.00.
Okay, that number was 2,798,800.00.
That is correct.
And I don't think this would have
No,
been
No.
or anything. Okay, just making sure. Yep. That was our only bidder. So that was Corporate Maintenance Group LLC for $2,798,800.00, and that was our only bidder for RFQ 000558, Pavement Marking and Signage Services for Baltimore City. And that is actually our last opening for today, 7/24/2024. Our next bid opening is on August 7th, 2024. And thanks, everybody, for freezing in the Board of Estimates room with me today and helping open these up. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. It is...